Hello and welcome to BYJU'S. The topic for this week is Aadhaar. In this lecture, what are we going to talk about? We'll talk about what is Aadhaar, what was the need to roll out Aadhaar. We'll talk about some of the various important provisions of the Aadhaar Act of 2016. And we will be looking at very closely some of the recent controversies surrounding Aadhaar. Aadhaar was tabled as a money bill in Lok Sabha. Aadhaar is made mandatory in various cases. The advantages of Aadhaar, the issues of surveillance and privacy that is surrounding this entire debate on Aadhaar. And we'll also be looking at the way forward for Aadhaar in this country. So let's get started, beginning with what is Aadhaar? As you would know, Aadhaar is a 12-digit unique identity number. Every single resident in this country is eligible to get this Aadhaar number. How? All you have to do, you have to part away with your biometric and demographic data. This biometric and demographic data will be collected by an authority called Unique Identification Authority of India. There are two important points which can be relevant for your prelims examination. Point number one. This authority, Unique Identification Authority of India, is a statutory authority. That means created by an act of parliament. Second, this authority comes under Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. These two are very important details and can be a potential question for your prelims examination. So what is an Aadhaar? Aadhaar is a 12-digit unique identity number. But before we can proceed, let us look at the need for an Aadhaar. What is the need for Aadhaar? Let me take you back to 1985. Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister. Rajiv Gandhi made a very interesting statement. There are PDS shops in this country. These PDS shops give food grains to the poor in this country. Rajiv Gandhi says that not more than 15% of these food grains is reaching the public, is reaching the poor. That means there is leakage in the system. PDS shops, which should have delivered food to the poor people of this country, there is leakage in the system. 85% leakage according to Rajiv Gandhi. Let's not forget, we are a welfare state. When we are a welfare state, that means benefits should be provided to the poor. Benefits should be provided to these beneficiaries. Let me give you a very simple example so that you are able to understand the need for an Aadhaar. Let's assume that the state has to give benefits to whom? Beneficiaries. Who are these beneficiaries? Poor, downtrodden, marginalized sections of our society. What are these benefits that the state gives these individuals? Subsidies, LPG, kerosene, scholarships, pensions. Let us take one example, pension. Let us assume that the government has started a scheme wherein the government will pay rupees 500 per month as an old age pension to the beneficiaries. 500 per month benefit will be provided by the state to beneficiaries. But what is the mechanism involved? This 500 rupee per month will go to the beneficiaries, but through middlemen. This is where two problems arise. Problem number one, leakage. Problem number two, duplication. Benefit of rupees 500 per month will go to the beneficiary. Clear? Through middlemen. But the problem is, if 500 rupee should go to a beneficiary, these middlemen are not paying 500 rupee to the beneficiary. Instead, they are paying, let's say, 200 rupees per month. What happens to the remaining 300? That is pocketed by these corrupt middlemen. That means there is leakage in the system. That means despite the fact that lakhs and lakhs of crores are spent by the government for poverty alleviation programs, but unfortunately, India still is a very poor country because there is corruption in the system, there is leakage in the system. Benefit of 500 rupee per month should have been given to the beneficiaries, but they are not getting 500, they are getting less than that. And the remainder is pocketed by these corrupt middlemen. Leakage in the system. But that's not the only problem. The problem is duplication as well. What do we mean by duplication? Let us assume that in a particular district, there are 100 beneficiaries who are entitled for this old age pension. But these middlemen and the corrupt authorities in this country, what they are doing? They are inflating the number of beneficiaries. That means they are raising this number from 100 to 1000. Ultimately, who are these 900 beneficiaries? They are ghosts. Ghost beneficiaries are created by these authorities, by these middlemen, and ultimately the money is pocketed by these middlemen. Duplication and leakage, these twin problems need to be resolved. This is where government woke up. Government thought that we have to attack these twin problems of leakage and duplication. How are we going to solve this problem? Let's have a unique identity number in the form of Aadhaar. What will happen because of this? Number one, duplication will be taken care of. How? I'm giving you an Aadhaar number, but this Aadhaar number will be based on your biometric data. This biometric data is in the form of fingerprints, iris scan, fingerprint, they are unique for every individual. So that means you can't create duplicates of beneficiaries. You can't create ghost beneficiaries in this country. That means with one number, one unique number for every single resident in this country, you are solving the problem of duplication. But what about leakage? Instead of 500 rupee per month to be given to the beneficiaries through these middlemen, let's eradicate the entire concept of middlemen. So what will the government do? Government will deposit this 500 rupee per month directly into the bank accounts of beneficiaries. But how can we ensure that there are no ghost bank accounts? Every bank account is to be linked with Aadhaar. So that means we are clearly in a position to identify the beneficiary. There will be no leakage in the system. There will be no duplication in the system. So one single number, a 12-digit number, is a panacea to solve the problems of leakage and duplication. So what have we understood as of now? What is an Aadhaar? And through this very small and simple example, we have now understood the need for an Aadhaar. Because there is leakage in the system, there is duplication in the system, and ultimately the government woke up to the idea of having a unique identification number for every single beneficiary in this country. 2009, the then UPA government created an authority, Unique Identification Authority of India. This authority functioned under Planning Commission. But there was a problem. The problem was there was no law which can back Aadhaar. That means by an executive resolution, the government is creating a Unique Identification Authority of India, and this UIDAI has been authorized to issue Aadhaar numbers to every single resident in this country. In absence of a law, many people raised objections. How can you collect biometric details, demographic details about the individuals without the sanction of the law of the parliament? Come 2016, this is where Parliament passed the Aadhaar Act of 2016. So Aadhaar was provided legal sanction in 2016. Unique Identification Authority of India became a statutory body in 2016. Let us look at some of the important provisions of this Aadhaar Act of 2016. Eligibility. Who is eligible to get this Aadhaar number? Who is eligible to be enrolled for this unique scheme called Aadhaar? Every resident shall be entitled to obtain an Aadhaar number. That means one important point. Aadhaar is not only for citizens of this country. Aadhaar can be issued even to foreigners. Every single individual who has stayed in this country for 182 days is eligible to obtain an Aadhaar. That means one important point, Aadhaar is not only for citizens, it is for residents, and residents includes foreigners. Point number 2, when you want to enroll for Aadhaar, you want to get this unique 12-digit identification number, you have to part away with your biometric details and your demographic details. What are these details? Photograph, fingerprint, iris scan. What are the demographic information that you have to provide? Name, date of birth, address. There is a misconception in the society that Aadhaar is also taking away your caste details, which is not correct. So if tomorrow question comes in your prelims examination, which are these demographic details that the Unique Identification Authority of India wants from you? It is name, date of birth and address. And biometric details, photograph, fingerprint and the iris scan. This is the information which is collected by this authority, and this authority issues you a unique 12-digit identification number. Another important information which can be a potential question for your prelims examination. Aadhaar is only a proof of identity. Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship. That means if tomorrow a foreigner gets an Aadhaar number, this Aadhaar number will not entitle him for citizenship, because Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship, it is not a proof of domicile. Aadhaar is only and only a proof of identity. Aadhaar only proves X is X. Nothing more, nothing less. Now we know that there is an authority called Unique Identification Authority of India, which assigns these Aadhaar numbers to the residents. What are the other functions that this authority performs or can perform over a period of time? Number 1, it specifies what are these demographic and biometric details that people have to give. That means if today you have to give your name, your address, your iris scan, your fingerprint, tomorrow an additional biometric data you have to part away with. And that will be specified by this authority called UIDAI. Not only this, that means this authority will specify which demographic and biometric details you have to furnish. It will also assign these Aadhaar numbers to the individuals, authenticate them, and will also specify where can you use this Aadhaar, for which benefit this Aadhaar can be used by the residents of this country. 2 important points regarding this Unique Identification Authority of India, which can be a potential question for your prelims examination. Point number 1, Unique Identification Authority will consist of a chairperson, 2 part-time members, and a chief executive officer. This is point number 1. Point number 2, what are the qualifications? You can be appointed as the chairperson of this Unique Identification Authority or a member of this Unique Identification Authority, provided you have an experience of at least 10 years. Where? In technology or governance. If you have more than 10 years of experience, you are eligible to be appointed as a chairperson of Unique Identification Authority of India or the member of this authority. This is about Unique Identification Authority of India. Clear? Let's look at something else. I told you that to enroll for an Aadhaar number, you have to give 2 sets of information. One, your demographic information, the other, biometric information. Your demographic information, which can be your name, your date of birth, your residence, it can be shared with others. It can be shared even with the private companies. But your biometric data cannot be shared. Your biometric information is safe with the Unique Identification Authority of India, which cannot be shared with any authority in this country, including private players. But there are exceptions. And there are 2 exceptions under which even your biometric details can be shared or can be revealed. Number 1, in the interest of national security, a joint secretary level officer at the central government, if he decides that it is in the national interest to reveal the biometric data about an individual, this individual can share your data, can reveal your data. That means there is an exception. Exception number 1, in the interest of national security, which unfortunately has not been defined in this act. National security can be anything. That means tomorrow, a joint secretary level officer at the central government will declare that the conditions are such that it is in the national interest that this particular individual's biometric details can be revealed, and they can do that. So number one, in the interest of national security, your biometric details can be revealed. And number two, the courts can order. For example, I'm an accused in a criminal case, in a murder case. Investigations have been carried out. The court will instruct the Unique Identification Authority of India that we have to match the fingerprints of this individual with your database. Reveal this individual's biometric information, biometric data. And Unique Identification Authority of India will reveal this data on the instructions of the courts in this country. That means your biometric data is safe. But under two conditions, under two circumstances, even this biometric data can be shared in the interest of national security and on the orders of the courts in this country. Now let us come to the basic current affairs topic that you might have read or heard recently. They were in the news. Number one, Aadhaar was tabled as a money bill. Now, what is a money bill? We'll talk about that. This money bill can be tabled only in Lok Sabha. This money bill cannot be tabled in Rajya Sabha. And once it is tabled in Lok Sabha, it requires simple majority to pass. Get the simple majority in Lok Sabha and pass this money bill. After the passage of money bill in Lok Sabha, this bill will be sent to Rajya Sabha. This is where Rajya Sabha has absolutely no role vis-a-vis a money bill. Or we can say very restricted role vis-a-vis a money bill. Rajya Sabha cannot reject a money bill. Rajya Sabha cannot even amend a money bill. Rajya Sabha can at most suggest recommendations. If Rajya Sabha passes this bill, the bill is passed. If Rajya Sabha suggests recommendations to this bill will go back to Lok Sabha. If Lok Sabha will accept these recommendations, the bill is passed. If Lok Sabha will reject these recommendations, even then the bill is passed. That means Rajya Sabha has a very, very minimal role vis-a-vis the passage of a money bill. Not only this, Lok Sabha passed a money bill. This bill is sent to Rajya Sabha. What if Rajya Sabha does not act on this bill? Rajya Sabha is neither passing this bill, nor Rajya Sabha is suggesting recommendations to this money bill. At the end of 14 days, the bill shall be deemed to have passed by both houses of the parliament. That means Lok Sabha passed a money bill. This bill is sent to Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha does not act on this bill for 14 days. At the expiry of this 14-day period, it is assumed that this money bill was passed by both houses of the parliament, and then the money bill is passed. This Aadhaar was tabled as a money bill. Why was it tabled as a money bill? Because there are critics who say that since government is in a minority in Rajya Sabha, ultimately this is the reason why this bill was tabled as a money bill, so that Rajya Sabha will have very less minimal role regarding the passage of this money bill, which is Aadhaar. But what is a money bill basically? Article 110 defines money bill. Constitution says that any bill is a money bill if it deals with money matters. Those money matters which are mentioned under Article 110. One important point. Article 110 talks about that a bill is a money bill if it deals with only those money matters which are mentioned under Article 110. The appropriation of monies out of Consolidated Fund of India is a money bill. That means there is a fund called Consolidated Fund of India, where all the money, all the revenue of the government is deposited. If you want to withdraw even a single penny from this Consolidated Fund of India, you need to pass an appropriation bill. Aadhaar, subsidies, benefits are to be provided to the people, right? Benefits, for example, scholarships, pensions, old age pensions. Where is this money going to come from? This money has to come from Consolidated Fund of India. That means this Aadhaar bill, which talks about providing subsidies, benefits to the people, where will the money come from? The money will come from Consolidated Fund of India. That means it is a money bill. But there are critics who say that Article 110 talks about a bill is a money bill if it deals only with those matters which are mentioned under Article 110. Yes, Aadhaar bill talks about withdrawal of money from Consolidated Fund of India. That means it should be a money bill. But that is not the only thing that Aadhaar talks about. Aadhaar Act also talks about Unique Identification Authority of India. It also talks about enrollment. It also talks about data security. It also talks about how this data will be shared with the private companies. So this Aadhaar Act does not only talk about withdrawal of money from Consolidated Fund of India, it talks about something else as well. That means it should not have been a money bill, it should have been a financial bill. Financial bill under Article 117 of Indian Constitution. What is the difference between a money bill and a financial bill? Money bill is a bill if it deals with only money matters which are mentioned under Article 110. Only money matters. If a bill deals with money matters but also something else as well, then it is not a money bill, it is a financial bill. And if a bill is a financial bill, Rajya Sabha has an equal role vis-a-vis Lok Sabha. Rajya Sabha can reject a financial bill. Rajya Sabha can amend a financial bill. And if there is a deadlock, then to resolve this deadlock, there can be a joint session of Indian Parliament as well. That is why critics say, since this Aadhaar should ideally have been a financial bill, but then the government is in a minority in the Rajya Sabha. To bypass Rajya Sabha, the government placed this Aadhaar bill as a money bill in the Lok Sabha, just to bypass Rajya Sabha because they are in a minority in the Rajya Sabha. That means, let me explain it further. Rules mentioned under Aadhaar Act, they deal with enrollment, updation, and authentication of Aadhaar number. These rules also deal with matters such as data security, sharing of demographic and biometric information, etc., etc. This is the character of the bill. The character of the bill is not the withdrawal of funds from Consolidated Fund of India, but the character of the bill is creating a unique identification number for every single resident in this country. This is what Erskine May talks about. Erskine May writes a book, Parliamentary Practice. In this seminal book, Erskine May is talking about that if a bill talks about withdrawal of money from Consolidated Fund of India, this condition alone will not give this bill the character of a money bill. You have to look at the deep character of this bill. If Aadhaar bill talks about withdrawal of money from Consolidated Fund of India, this alone will not declare that the bill is a money bill. That means you have to look at the other options of this bill, other characters of this bill. If the character of the bill is not only to withdraw money from Consolidated Fund of India, but also to create a unique identification authority of India, that means this bill is not a money bill. It is any other bill, any ordinary bill, but it is not a money bill. That means the character is not the withdrawal of funds from the Consolidated Fund of India. Jairam Ramesh, a Congress MP in Rajya Sabha, he approached the Supreme Court through his lawyer P. Chidambaram, challenging the decision of the government to table this Aadhaar bill as a money bill. Because if you look at Article 110, there is a clause called Article 110 Clause 3, which states that whether a bill is a money bill or not, who will decide that? This question will be decided by the Speaker, and the decision of the Speaker shall be final and binding. That means this decision of the Speaker cannot be challenged in any court of law. Jairam Ramesh went to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court accepted this petition, and now Supreme Court will decide whether Aadhaar should have been a money bill or not. But the more important question is whether the judiciary has a right to question the Speaker's decision in such a matter. Article 110, as I said, clearly states that with regard to the question whether a legislation is a money bill or not, the decision of the Speaker is final and binding. The question is whether such a clause completely excludes any judicial review. Let's not forget, judicial review is part of the basic structure of Indian Constitution. There is also another article in the Constitution, Article 122 of Indian Constitution. This article prohibits the courts from questioning the validity of any proceedings in the Parliament. That means anything that happens on the floor of the Parliament cannot be questioned in any court of law. That means we have two important issues here. Article 110, which gives the speaker the final role to decide whether a bill is a money bill or not. Article 122, which talks about procedures in the parliament, how the bills are tabled, how the bills are passed, how the bills are sent to various committees. These are the questions that cannot be decided upon in any court of law. This is where the Supreme Court also gives us conflicting history. If you look at Raja Rampal versus Honorable Speaker of Lok Sabha, in this case, the Supreme Court had clarified that proceedings of the legislature were immune from questioning by courts. That means the courts cannot question the procedures that are there in the parliament, but only if there is a case of illegality will the court enter into picture. What does that mean? Look at this very beautifully. Raja Rampal versus Honorable Speaker Lok Sabha. There is Article 110. The decision of the Speaker regarding a money bill is final and binding. Article 122 of Indian Constitution. The procedures in the Parliament will not be subject to judicial review. But the fact is, in this case, the Supreme Court said, yes, how you will pass the bill, how you will introduce the bill, we will not enter into picture. Because these are the procedures of the Parliament which we have no role in. But if the decision of the Speaker is illegal, that is only when we can enter. That means judiciary can enter into picture if the Speaker has abused the Constitution. If the Speaker has abused the Constitution and passed an illegal certification. So this is one judgment of the Supreme Court. But once we turn to Mohammad Sayeed Siddiqui versus State of Uttar Pradesh, the court is giving a completely different picture. Judiciary makes it clear that the decision of the Speaker shall be final. The proceedings of the House, how it will be carried out, it is an important privilege of the state legislature and cannot be inquired in any court of law. In view of these conflicting pictures, we don't know in which way the Supreme Court rule. Let's wait for the Supreme Court verdict on this. But there are other issues to look at. One thing is clear. If the logic of the government prevails, because Finance Minister Arun Jaitley says Aadhaar is a money bill because we have to provide subsidies to the people. Where will we get the money for these subsidies? From the Consolidated Fund of India? That means we have to withdraw money from Consolidated Fund of India? That means it is a money bill. One thing is clear. If this logic of the government prevails, then any bill can be deemed as a money bill. And thereby the role of Rajya Sabha will be curtailed. And let's not forget, Rajya Sabha represents the states in the Indian federal scheme of things. It can set a bad precedent which has the potential to disturb the federal nature of Indian polity. Such a trend would be disastrous. Let's not forget there are 32 legislative houses in this country, 29 states, 2 union territories which have legislative assembly and 1 parliament. There are 32 legislative houses in this country. And what will happen if all of them start treating ordinary bills as money bills? So by now, we know what is Aadhaar, what was the need for an Aadhaar, and the controversy over designating Aadhaar as a money bill. Now let us look at the advantages of the Aadhaar as well as the disadvantages. But before that, there is a caveat from my side. While I'll be listing the benefits of Aadhaar, please don't call me a Bhakt. And while I'll be doing a critical analysis of the system, please don't call me a Kongi or a leftist. Let's have an unbiased view of Aadhaar. We look at the advantages, we look at the disadvantages as well. Because from the UPSC perspective, you should know the pros about a system as well as the cons of the system. So first up, let's talk about the advantages of Aadhaar. Aadhaar enabled biometric attendance system was introduced in various government offices. The system was introduced to check the late arrival and absenteeism of government employees. And it has curbed the absenteeism of government employees to a large extent in those offices where Aadhaar enabled attendance system was introduced. So that's the benefit of Aadhaar. December 2014. It was proposed by Minister for Women and Child Development, Maneka Gandhi, that Aadhaar should be made mandatory for men to create a profile on matrimonial websites. Why? To prevent fake profiles. Then a survey was conducted by lovevivah.com. What are the highlights of this survey? As many as 74% users believed that adding Aadhaar verification as a check has increased the authenticity. Another finding, 80% of the users feel that matrimonial sites are unsafe, insecure, and full of fake profiles. One more important number that came out of the survey was the fact that the popularity of online matrimonial websites is increasing with every passing day. And according to the number compiled, 14% of the users who took part in this survey conducted by lovevivah.com found their life partner through online matrimonial sites. That means Aadhaar has proved to be a blessing, to be a useful tool in creating authenticity, in creating authentic profiles on these matrimonial websites. So it's a good step. In August 2012, Andhra Pradesh asked citizens to surrender their ration cards. Those ration cards which are illegal. Because Andhra Pradesh wanted to link ration cards with the Aadhaar number to remove the duplicates, to remove the illegal ration cards. And you will be surprised by the numbers. By September 2014, close to 15 lakh illegal ration cards had been surrendered. And look at the amount of money that Andhra Pradesh government would have saved from this exercise. Let's go to the neighboring state, Telangana. Only in Hyderabad region of Telangana, Aadhaar numbers were linked with ration cards. Just to remove the duplicate ration cards. And only in Hyderabad, 3 lakh duplicate cards were removed. Not only this, let's look at a very important and beautiful survey which was conducted by National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. A cost-benefit analysis of Aadhaar was done. By whom? By this National Institute. This study estimates the costs and benefits of Aadhaar. Let me quote you from the report. We find that substantial benefits would accrue to the government by integrating Aadhaar. Integrating Aadhaar with what? With schemes such as PDS, Public Distribution System, Maganrega, fertilizer and LPG subsidies, as well as housing, education and health program. This study said the benefits that will arise from the reduction in leakages, ultimately, it will be huge. Let me quote the report. Our analysis takes into account the costs of developing and maintaining the Aadhaar. So what this cost-benefit analysis is all about? They will look at the cost of developing this Aadhaar, maintaining this Aadhaar, and integrating this Aadhaar with schemes over the next 10 years. This analysis tells us that let's begin with modest assumption. Let's say that there are only 7 to 12% leakage in a subsidy scheme. That means this is the subsidy scheme. Let's say kerosene or LPG or scholarships. Let us begin with the modest assumption that there is only 7 to 12% leakage. Even if there is only 7 to 12% leakage, but by linking Aadhaar with all these schemes, what will happen? Huge dividends to the state exchequer would take place. What is that huge dividend? The paper claimed, it's not my claim, the paper claimed that by 2015-2016, the benefits of the project would surpass the costs. And once we will enter into 2020 to 21, the total benefit would be 251 billion rupees. 251 billion rupees. And what is the expenditure? 48.35 billion rupees. That means cost benefit analysis. What is the cost of creating Aadhaar, maintaining Aadhaar, and integrating Aadhaar numbers with all the schemes of the country? 48 billion. And what will be the total benefit by 2020-21? 251 billion. The benefits would come from where? By plugging leakages in various subsidy and social benefit schemes. If you don't believe in the survey, at least believe in the World Bank. World Bank believes that the Indian Aadhaar system is so good that it should be adopted by all countries of the world. World Bank says that although there are similar systems working around the world, But Aadhaar-like standard system has impressed us. World Bank chief economist Paul Romer says the system in India is the most sophisticated that I have ever seen. The praise for Aadhaar came from the World Bank. Nandan Nilekani, the co-founder of Infosys, who was the first chairperson of Unique Identification Authority of India, the man behind the Aadhaar, he said there are several countries such as Tanzania, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, our neighbor, even Russia, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. These countries have expressed interest in the system. But there are also people who cry about the loss of data and misuse of the biometric details. But the Unique Identification Authority of India has said that all Aadhaar data is fully protected, completely safe. The government has dismissed all allegations that there have been information breaches and that biometric data has been misused. There has been no misuse. Unique Identification Authority of India says Aadhaar in any manner whatsoever and personal data of individuals held by Unique Identification Authority of India is fully safe and secure. Why? Because UIDAI uses one of the world's most advanced encryption technologies. Ultimately, as a result, during the last 7 years, there has been no report of breach or leak of data out of Unique Identification Authority of India. Unique Identification Authority of India also tells us that in the last 7 years, there has been no case where anyone has reported identity theft or financial theft, though more than 400 crore Aadhaar authenticated transactions have taken place. You might have heard that recently the wife of Mahendra Singh Dhoni tweeted to the IT minister that the details of Aadhaar of MS Dhoni has been leaked online. But the fact is, biometric data was not leaked. The biometric data of Mahendra Singh Dhoni was not leaked, was not shared online. Moreover, subsidies which are being transferred to the people, these subsidies are linked with Aadhaar. It has helped the government save 49,000 crore in the past 2.5 years alone. There are people who complain that biometric details should not be shared with the government. There are people who say that my biometric details should not be shared with the government because government will misuse them. But for God's sake, tell me how many of those loudly protesting Aadhaar refuse their biometric data when they apply for visas to the West? When you apply for visas to the West, you have to give your biometric data. Does that mean we should trust the foreign governments and not our own government? Some say Aadhaar debate is not about data protection. It's about finding a new stick to beat Narendra Modi with. The only demographic information Aadhaar asks for besides biometrics are name, address, gender, date of birth. But don't we share such information online? With Google, with Facebook, with Twitter? So what is the problem with sharing with the government? Ultimately, it is for the benefit of the people. Subsidies will be targeted so that there is no leakage in the system, no duplication in the system. The responsibility of ensuring the safety of these biometric rests with Unique Identification Authority of India. Do we not provide our fingerprints for attendance purposes in our offices, in private companies, in multinational companies? In fact, these private companies are far less reliable than our government. Further, information which is collected under Aadhaar can only be used for KYC, know your customer, and only after the consent of the person. That means if you want a Jio SIM, the person will ask you your fingerprint. You will give your fingerprint, and then this fingerprint will be authenticated against your fingerprints in the UIDAI database to check whether it is you or someone else. But that too, only after you have consented. Without your consent, Unique Identification Authority of India will not authenticate any request from Reliance Jio. There were people without any documents for verification. Due to absence of these documents, they could not get any benefit from the government. Aadhaar provides people like these with an identity. In one state, there were ration cards for the people, but the number of ration cards were 30% more than the total population. Aadhaar has checked this because Aadhaar will link these ration cards. Aadhaar merely proves, as I said, X is X. Nothing more, nothing less. There was a lady in Faridabad who had 932 PAN cards. That means she could have opened 932 bank accounts. Imagine the black money stored. Now with Aadhaar linked with PAN, except one, all these PAN cards would be redundant. Problem solved. Now you will ask me, PAN was introduced. When PAN was introduced, we were told that such problems of duplication won't arise. The fact that problems are still there shows PAN has failed. If PAN has failed, how will Aadhaar help? It's a very silly argument. Government is only creating an additional security mechanism. PAN plus Aadhaar. If this also fails, then we will work out something else. Times change and so should laws, so should policies, so should programs. Aadhaar is a unique experiment. Aadhaar is not a panacea. That means Aadhaar is not a single solution to all the problems, but it is a potentially game-changing in how the state distributes welfare. These are some of the most important benefits, advantages of Aadhaar. But while we were discussing the advantages, I hope you did not call me Bakht. But now once we'll have a critical analysis of Aadhaar, I hope you will not call me a leftist or a communist or a Congi supporter. Let's look at some of the disadvantages and the issues of surveillance and privacy surrounding Aadhaar. Criticism number 1. Placing conditions on access to food entitlements is not a marker of a welfare state. Through promotion of Aadhaar, the Indian state is behaving like a corporate entity that provides services on the condition that it gets access to your information. It is not a marker of the welfare state. Welfare state should provide benefits to the people without any condition, whether you share your data or not. That's one criticism. Reports from Gujarat, Jharkhand, Andhra Pradesh and other states have described the exclusion of genuine beneficiaries. Why? Because of the problems with Aadhaar records and authentication issues. Not only authentication issues, technological and infrastructural failures as well. What am I trying to say? There are people who have Aadhaar cards, but their biometric details are not matching the details in the database. Why? Due to hard manual labor, their fingerprints have changed. Not changed, but their fingerprints are not matching the biometric details they first shared while they enrolled for an Aadhaar. That means Aadhaar, which was viewed as a solution to check leakages and duplication, has also resulted in genuine beneficiaries not able to access benefits from the state. This experience from Gujarat, Jharkhand, Andhra Pradesh should have taught the government that mere adoption of technology is not a panacea for corruption, is not a panacea for inefficiency in the delivery of services. That's another problem. Let's look at another issue. For an ordinary citizen like me, the most worrying aspect of Aadhaar is control about who can access my biometric data. When you enroll for Aadhaar, there is a form that is provided to you. Consent. I have no objection to the UIDAI sharing information provided by me to the UIDAI with agencies engaged in delivery of public services, including welfare. This is the consent form, and I have to sign on this consent form. These terms of consent have not been defined by the Unique Identification Authority of India. That means in the propagation of Aadhaar, the government has failed to highlight or explain this consent taking. Not only this, there exists a way to lock one's biometric data. Your biometric data, which is your fingerprint, your iris scan, it is unlocked by default. By default, it is unlocked. You can lock it. How? An OTP is sent, one-time password, OTP. It is sent to your registered mobile phone and you can lock your data. But this feature is not highlighted. And this feature is also out of reach for those without access to internet, without access to a mobile phone. That's another problem. Then there is another problem with clause 57. Nothing contained in this act shall prevent the use of Aadhaar number for any purpose, whether by the state or any body, corporate or person, or any contract to this effect. What does that mean? Such a clause, if you read this clause carefully, such a clause clearly allows non-state entities to use Aadhaar authentication and gain access to data. This data has already happened. The Unique Identification Authority of India recently stopped 24 firms from using its data in an unauthorized manner. That means your data, your demographic data can be shared. And there will be people who will be unauthorizedly using your data. That is the cause of concern. Then there is another confusion. This time regarding the definition of biometric information. How do you define this biometric information? This biometric information can also include, the Act states, other biological attributes. These are not my words, these are the words of the Act. That means this biometric information has not been explained. Today we are giving our fingerprints, iris scan. The Act says this biometric information tomorrow can include other biological attributes as well. Does that mean DNA in the future? Let's not forget, for many years, the governments are trying to pass a DNA profiling bill. That means, can tomorrow our DNA also be stored in the databases of Unique Identification Authority of India? That is a matter of concern. Seeding is a matter of grave concern in this project. What is seeding? This is about introduction of Aadhaar number into every database. That means my Aadhaar number will be linked with ration card, seeded with ration card, seeded with PAN card, seeded with driving license, seeded with bank accounts, seeded with IT returns. Once the number is seeded in various databases, it makes the convergence of personal information remarkably simple. So if the number is in the gas agency, bank, ticket, ration card, voter ID, the medical records, the state, and also others who learn to use this ID platform, they can see the citizen at will. It will lead to what some people call a surveillance mechanism. I told you a while ago that perhaps Aadhaar should have been tabled as a financial bill. But in fact, Aadhaar should have been a constitutional amendment bill because it seems to violate a right to privacy of the people. And this right to privacy is a fundamental right. That doesn't mean fundamental rights cannot be amended. You can do that, but you can't do that through an ordinary law. And certainly not through a money bill. You have to pass a constitutional amendment bill for that. This is where it becomes hilarious. Arun Jaitley is saying right to privacy is not a fundamental right. He has confused even the Supreme Court. And now Supreme Court Chief Justice has said, we will set up a constitution bench to decide on this issue, whether right to privacy is a fundamental right or not. Despite the fact that there are series of legal judgments which have upheld the right to property as a fundamental right under Article 21 of Indian Constitution. But the same Arun Jaitley has filed a defamation case against Arvind Kejriwal. In this case, he is arguing that Arvind Kejriwal has violated his privacy, and right to privacy is a fundamental right. But let us look at something interesting. What is the probability that an evil man will break into a store which houses or contains all the authentication factors, such as your passwords or your PINs? What is the probability? I'll say the probability is 0. Why? That is because no such store exists. Is there a centralized store which houses all the passwords? Clearly no. But if I'll change the question, what is the probability of an evil man breaking into CIDR? What is CIDR? Central Identities Data Repository. What is the probability of an evil man breaking into this CIDR? This CIDR is of Unique Identification Authority of India, which houses all the biometric data. This CIDR houses all the biometric data of the people. What is the probability of an evil man breaking into this CIDR? I would say greater than 0. How do we know this? 1. The central store exists. There is no centralized store where all the passwords are stored, but there is a centralized store where all your biometric data is contained. 1. The central store exists. And 2. Aadhaar Act lists breaking into this central store an offense. Why would law penalize something which is not technologically possible? That means CIDR is hackable. There is another issue. What if your computer is hacked? And in this computer, you had stored your password for internet banking, for example. Still not a big deal. Why? Because you can change your password. But what if CIDR is hacked and your biometric data is stolen? Biometric data is your password to avail various benefits. This biometric data cannot be changed. There are two concerns here. Please understand this carefully. Concern number 1. Once a biometric authentication factor has been compromised, there is no way to change it. The security of the system, which is secured by biometrics, is permanently compromised. Second, our biometrics are so easy to steal. We leave our fingerprints everywhere. We saw in the beginning of this lecture that ghost beneficiaries were created. And the leakages in the pre-Aadhaar era were huge. Let's look at something very interesting. There are free tools available on the internet, such as, what is this? Synthetic fingerprint generator. This synthetic fingerprint generator will allow you to create fake biometrics. How? Once you enroll for an Aadhaar, there is a hardware setup, there is a device to which USB cables are linked, right? This can be intercepted using hardware that can be bought online. With a little bit of clever programming, countless number of ghosts can be created. Critics say that Aadhaar is a surveillance project which is masquerading as a development intervention. Why? Because it uses biometrics. There is a big difference between the government identifying you and you identifying yourself to the government. Before Aadhaar, it was much more difficult for the government to identify you without your knowledge and your cooperation. Very difficult. Let us look at a hypothetical situation. Imagine it's not 2017, it is 1975. Indira Gandhi imposes emergency. People are on the roads to protest this anti-democratic move. And rightly so. But all Indians now have Aadhaar. Government has biometric data about everybody. All the government has to do, use a high resolution camera to find out the people who are protesting. These high resolution cameras will take the snap, iris scan will be done by these high resolution cameras, and then match these with the database. And one by one, arrest all these genuine protesters. That means tomorrow, using high resolution cameras and the power of big data, the government will be able to remotely identify those participating in a public protest. That is a scary world. Let us look at something else. This is very important. False positive identification rate. What is it? For example, you go to a PDS shop to buy ration. Clear? At this PDS shop, there is a POS machine, point of sale machine, where I will give my biometric, I will give my fingerprint. This fingerprint will be matched with the database of UIDAI to see whether it is me or someone else. And if I'm entitled for this ration, I will get the ration. Clear? This is what we call the authentication. How many times this machine will fail to authenticate me? There was an article published in Economic and Political Weekly by Mr. Hans Verghese Matthews. Hans Verghese Matthews works with Center for Internet Studies. Hans Verghese Matthews says 1 out of 146, there will be this problem. That means out of 146 people, one person will not be authenticated by this machine. That means even Aadhaar is not error-free and can deny genuine beneficiaries access to welfare measures of the state. Let's look at something else. Monopoly. Prior to Aadhaar, nobody got paid when citizens identified themselves to the state. Now the citizens have identified themselves to the state, to Unique Identification Authority of India. Now this Unique Identification Authority of India can share your details, not your biometric details, but your demographic details to even private players. UIDAI has information of all the people in this country. Our corporate entities are hungry for one thing. What is that? Data. Data about people so that they can reach out to them and sell their products to them. Here, the Unique Identification Authority of India will become the monopoly provider of all the identification and authentication services in India. That sounds like a centrally planned communist state to me. Should not the right wing oppose the act because it prevents the free market from working? Some big companies can afford money to be paid to Unique Identification Authority of India to get the information. Smaller players cannot. This is against the spirit of free market. Let us look at something interesting. Aadhaar is the brand and logo of Unique Identification Authority of India. The Aadhaar number is a random, unique 12-digit number issued to each person who successfully enrolls. But let us look at the procedure adopted by UIDAI. This procedure is so casual that it borders on irresponsible. Briefly, the entire process at the field level is in the hands of private enterprises. These private enterprises operate even without government supervision. That means government officers are not collecting your biometric data. Government officers are not collecting your demographic data. These are the private entities who are collecting this biometric data. They collect your biometric details. These biometric details are initially stored and collected in private hands before they are transmitted to CIDR. Clear? How? You can use a memory stick, or you can send these details by courier, or you can upload directly these biometric details to this CIDR. When CIDR gets this biometric information, then there is a process called deduplication. This deduplication is undertaken to ensure that the same individual is not issued two UID numbers, two Aadhaar numbers. Who carries out this deduplication exercise? Accenture, Mahindra Satyam and Morpho joint venture, L1 Identity Solutions. What is the problem? Your biometrics are handled by entities of alien origin with no particular affection for Indian constitutional values. Not only this, LY Identity Solutions is well known for its links with CIA of United States. Accenture, my dear friends, is on Smart Borders project with US Homeland Security. Scary? Perhaps it is. Now let's look at another issue. The another issue is of deactivation. This is equally important. Unique Identification Authority of India has deactivated 8.5 million Aadhaar numbers between 2010 and 2016. The deactivations are taking place through an automated process without human intervention and without giving prior notice to the resident holding the Aadhaar number. In other words, an artificial intelligence program is depriving millions of Indians of their rights, and that too without hearing those whose Aadhaar is cancelled. Then there is another criticism. There are those who argue that this Aadhaar project is violative of the doctrine of limited government. Doctrine of limited government says that the powers available with the government are not unlimited. There is a limitation on the powers of the state. Let me give you one example of this doctrine of limited government. Identification of the Prisoners Act of 1920. If I am a convict, I have been convicted by a court of law for a term of more than 1 year, rigorous imprisonment. I have to give my measurements and photographs to the police. My weight, my height, my fingerprints as well. But ultimately, once I am released from the jail, once I have been exonerated, if I am not a repeat offender, all these finger impressions, all these measurements, all my photographs, even my negatives are to be destroyed. But this we are talking about 1920, pre-constitutional era. This was the British Empire. Post-constitutional government is telling us that you have to give your biometric data, which will be from cradle to grave. Now, post-constitutional India will store your biometric details forever. The Aadhaar project has an enormous potential of surveillance. And this potential alters the relationship between the citizen and the state. It tilts the balance so steeply in favor of the government that a citizen whose biometrics are controlled by the state is permanently condemned to submission. Her tastes, her habits, her routines, her provocations are all known or can be known by the state. There is a bank of your biometric data, CIDR. This CIDR robs individuals of dignity. And this dignity is assured to me by the preamble to the Constitution. Then there is another problem with convergence. Convergence is about combining information. There are presently various pieces of information available separately and held in discrete silos separately. We give information to a range of agencies, as much as is necessary for them to do their job. The passport agency do not need to know how many bank accounts I have or whether I drive a car or not. The telephone company need not know how I have insured my house. The police need not know how often do I travel, unless and until I'm not a suspect. It is this that makes some privacy possible in this world. Such a privacy should be maintained. But the ease with which this technology has whittled down this notion of private has to be contained. This cannot be expanded. Aadhaar, in contrast, will act as a bridge between these silos of information. It will take away the control of me as an individual about what information I want to share and with whom. Once Aadhaar becomes an all-purpose identification tool, your life will be as transparent to the state as contact lens. Details of your railway bookings, phone call records, financial transactions, and so on will be accessible to the government at the click of a mouse. Let me give you something very interesting. In late 18th century, Jeremy Bentham, a utilitarian, he designed buildings in which students, workers, or prisoners could be surveilled at all times without ever being able to see those watching them. Bentham argued that such a structure would save governments and factory owners what? Money. Because inmates and workers would not know when they were being watched. That means it will reduce the number of guards required to run the place. He called his dream structure Panopticon. And he was about to start this prison based on this idea of Panopticon. But he didn't receive sufficient funding. No Panopticon was ever built. Critics say a Panopticon is being built right here in India. In absence of a privacy law in India, Aadhaar has a huge scope of turning India into a police state. After looking at all these disadvantages, all these concerns and issues surrounding surveillance and privacy, do you feel like giving up your Aadhaar number? Too bad. There is no such provision for this in the Aadhaar Act. Once you have given your biometric data, once you have been enrolled for Aadhaar, there is no option available for you to opt out of Aadhaar. So this was about Aadhaar. What is an Aadhaar? The need for an Aadhaar. The advantages of the Aadhaar system. Some of the provisions about the Aadhaar Act. And at the end, the criticisms. Some valid, some overblown about Aadhaar. Thank you for watching.